We finally got to participate in our first SCDRA race, and we didn't do half bad. Well, Alex didn't do half bad. I had some issues. This past weekend, we got to race with the Ohio Valley SCDRA series. For those that don't know, the Ohio Valley SCDRA series has held lots of high dollar races at tons of local tracks, like Jackson County, Tyler County, Mudlick, Ponderosa, Moeller, Florence, Circle City, Paragon, Richmond, Beckley, and now Lawrenceburg. They are also responsible for the King of Compacts and the Winter Freeze, both of which are absolutely worth checking out. We were excited to race with them at our home track, as our local track rules don't necessarily allow them to run during our normal weekly races. The SCDRA rules are pretty close to what Lawrenceburg's rules are, with exception to them being allowed to run VVT or VTEC. After watching the last couple KOCs, I was convinced that the only way to start up front at one of those races was to have like 300 horsepower in a 2,100 pound car. I was beyond excited when both Alex and I finished well enough in our heats to transfer to the A main. Alex went out in the first qualifying group and then ended up setting the fast time in that little group of cars. I went out in the second group and set the fast time in my group, and that had me feeling pretty confident. By the time all 33 cars qualified, I was the 11th fastest and Alex was the 13th fastest. Gage Cropper clicked off an impressive 18.5 lap in his qualifier, which I'm pretty sure is a track record for the compacts at Lawrenceburg. That's faster than most of our pro stocks and about half of our mods. Absolutely crazy. Alex started in the first heat, third row inside, with a bunch of fast cars. He managed to finish fourth with the top 6 cars transferring to the feature. I was in heat 2, starting second row outside, and I started behind Brandon Gibson Jr. I ran the car hard, and I was sliding a ton going into 3 several times. I made the classic mistake of leaving turn 2 way too high, and Lucas Walters shot past me on the bottom side. He just drove out of my life after that, and I was just sawing at the wheel trying to hold on to the fifth position at that point. I managed to keep 5th, and that ended up putting both Alex and I in the big show. Heat 3 was really exciting. Cordell and Jerry Gibson Jr. were racing for the lead. Cordell managed to show his nose after a great run off of turn 4 at one point, but Gibson held his line and ended up taking the win. Aiden finished 7th with Preston glued to his rear bumper. That's about the best run I've seen out of Aiden's car so far, honestly. Speaking of those two, they put on a hell of a show in the B main. Aiden ran second for most of that race, running a great line, and Preston eventually got underneath of him and just barely squeezed past when Aiden left turn 2 up at the wall. That ended up giving Preston the high line going into 3, which was also coming to the white flag lap, and Aiden gave it a hell of a run, but it looked like he just got a little loose going into 4 and ended up backing out, just barely giving P2 to Preston. Natalie ended up getting hit by another car in that race, which wrecked one of her wheels and took a tire down. I'm pretty sure that same car took Tyler Abbott out too. Because of that, they ended up giving Natalie a provisional spot in the A main, which was damn awesome of them. Going into the feature, Alex started in 10th, which was row 5 outside. I started 14th, which was row 7 outside. I wasn't going to be able to make any big moves on the start, so I just held back and turned some laps watching all the action around me. After several laps, I watched Jesse dive into the infield, and about that same time, Cordell lost a tire. Went yellow, and then after that restart, Alex was in 9th and I was in 16th. On that start, it looked like Brandon Gibson had a part failure, and his car ended up darting up towards the wall in turn 1. That put us back under yellow again. We took off on the next restart, and suddenly I was catching up to Preston fast. His car sounded really bad as I ended up going past. Pretty sure his engine let go. We did another lap when a car lost a wheel and ended up going yellow again. That put me back to 14th, which is where I ended up starting the feature. After that restart, I ended up deciding to stick the car on the bottom and hug the tires to see how it would do down there, and it seemed to be working because I was able to slowly gain on two cars that I had been racing the whole race. And just as I thought I was kind of making some moves finally in the feature, coming out of turn 4, my RPM just spiked really high and the car started darting around and got really weird under throttle. I figured I lost an axle, but didn't hear it banging and smashing around, so I tried to keep going. Went into turn 1, the car went completely sideways to the left, hooked back to the right, and then straight towards the infield tractor tire. I kept it together and ended up parking it in the infield. I am very grateful that I didn't take Natalie out while drifting a broken car around like an idiot, because my car came damn close to doing just that. Alex got lucky, as the car he had been racing hard for the last couple laps ended up braking on the white flag lap, giving him a 7th place finish. Not too bad. Congrats to Gage Cropper for absolutely killing it out there. After all of that, Alex won the Kiowa Concrete Lawrenceburg Weekend Warrior Bonus Award for being the top finishing Lawrenceburg regular, which is pretty cool. That brought his winnings up to $300, I believe. Even after my car breaking and not finishing the race, I still considered this evening a success. We ended up racing with some of the fastest compacts around and managed to hold our own. Our cars are at least 300 pounds heavier than most of the cars that showed up, and we still did pretty decent. This race has actually reignited my motivation to keep working on these cars and racing, because it's been a pretty demotivating season so far. I ended up talking to a lot of great people in the pits and even got some real good advice for the cars. I really hope to have another race like this at the Burg again in the future. One other thing I wanted to mention, just when we were pulling back from our heat races, we saw Chris Meyer pull into his pits and then immediately start ripping his car apart. And I swear it felt like 10 minutes later, he had his whole transmission on the ground. And it turns out his slave cylinder had failed and oiled his clutch down real bad. And unfortunately, we didn't have a spare slave cylinder with us, because I never actually thought to put one of those on the trailer. But what an absolute hustle from that team. They ended up putting that car back together with no slave cylinder, and they cleaned the clutch all up real good with brake clean and still put that thing back out into the feature with no clutch pedal, and still ended up finishing 6th, which I find to be absolutely remarkable. So props to those guys. As most people had seen, a lot of fire come out of the right front of my car right before it quit. When the axle did let go, it went up in flames. And it got pretty dang hot up here. It actually burnt the Bassett sticker off of my wheel, and there ain't a lick of grease left on this axle. I mean, I'm talking, these things are dry. This thing is like melted. So the sucky part of this is, when we were loading this car up to go to that race, I noticed my axles were making the popcorn sound, And I was like, well, we'll just swap axles and do it at the track. And we have a whole bunch of axles on that trailer, a bunch of newer aftermarket replacement axles, and then a couple stock axles. And I like using the stock axles because the newer ones tend to run short and you have to run a spacer with them. So I threw the nicest looking stock axle I had in this thing on this side, actually replaced both axles, left and right. And everything was good until it wasn't. Odds are I ended up throwing in an axle that had problems back into this car because I'm really terrible about labeling my broken parts and throwing them in a pile. So that's a my bad there. An axle cup still in there. There's freaking axle grease everywhere. I mean, it's like up the firewall. Now, as far as the fire was concerned, the brake system's fully intact. The lines didn't get mangled. The axle didn't beat anything to death. When I've had axles go in the past, sometimes it'll like bash the block and hit the subframe and everything. Everything is fine. It just kind of just left the chat, which I'm grateful for. As far as the fire is concerned, my only guess is that it heated the axle grease so hot that it combusted. I mean, I have no other explanation for it. I mean, you can see this wheel is like satin colored now. See, Alex's wheel. You know, shiny it normally is. There's his Bassett sticker there. That fireball scorched that wheel. To be fair, too, when I was hugging the tires, I was on the brakes quite a lot, so odds are these brakes were hot. But I don't know. The car drove off the track and drove onto the trailer just fine. Drove into the shop just fine. I even dumped the clutch in here and did a one tire burnout. Transmission feels good. In addition to the axle problem, when I pulled into the infield, I looked down at my temp gauge and it was about 220 degrees. And that's hotter than this motor has ever gotten. And I've got some dirt down there, but the radiator wasn't caked up. So I was really shocked to see that it had gotten that hot. When I drove it back to the pits, it was 245 degrees. And that is insane hot. In fact, it ended up puking all the water out of the reservoir. That reservoir is pretty much dry. The system still has water in it, but it overflowed the expansion tank completely. And I have no explanation why. As I said, it's never ran 220 before, and the fact that it crept up to that 245 really freaked me out. But I pulled all the plugs, and the plugs looked good. And I actually still got the compression tester here. Show you what we make. I mean, that's like a million hits from the starter there, but yeah. I left that hooked up overnight and it didn't bleed off hardly any pressure. So I think the motor's still good. Still has a slight bit of a rear main seal leak, but like I said in that last video, I'm not going to do anything about that until the end of the season. So guess I'll put some water in it, clean that radiator up, let it run around here, see how hot it gets. But I think she's good. Near as I can tell, the only thing I got to do to fix this car is put an axle back in it and she'll be ready to race. Alex's car, because of the previous race, we kind of slapped it together to get to this race and put a tie rod on this left front. Didn't realize the strut is slightly bent, so he only has 4 degrees of camber on this left front wheel, which is less than what we would normally like to run. So he did pretty good for a car that wasn't exactly dialed into how we would have preferred for the race. Yeah. Here's my update. If you couldn't tell, I was reading from a script because I had quite a lot to say this time, and I didn't want to have to re-record this video 72,000 times. So if it felt kind of robotic or rapid fire. That's why. We'll get this thing's wrapped up here, get an axle in that car, get them cleaned up. We'll be ready for that next race. And hope sometime in the future we'll have these SCDRA boys back out to Lawrenceburg, because I had a great time racing with them, and kind of motivates me to make my car a little bit quicker. See you guys in the next video.